Governor Reagan, again, typically is against such a proposal.
Governor, there you go again.
And here we go again. The primaries are done, the conventions are over. Now to the debates.
Your father was right to stand up to Joe McCarthy. You were wrong to attack my patriotism.
When the candidates for president and vice president come face to face, and millions upon millions will be watching.
Who am I? Why am I here?
If the past is a predictor, there will be unforgettable moments.
Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
Most of the polls show that there are very few undecided voters, but there's still a huge number of people who watch the debates. And the reason I do that is to take the measure of the individual.
Governor Clinton, you have 1 minute.
Public Television's Jim Lehrer is the dean of debate moderators. He's been at it for 24 years, and he's put more questions to more candidates than any of us.
What is there?
I've always thought that the vote for the presidency was different than any other vote we cast. The presidency, it seems to me, comes down to who do we feel most comfortable with in time of crisis.
That's exactly right. Bob Gates, the former defense secretary, he said temperament. There's such a thing as presidential temperament. You can smell it, you can feel it, it's there. And if some people have it, some people don't.
Considering the importance we place on them, it's hard to believe that presidential debates are fairly new to American politics.
The candidates need no introduction. The Republican candidate, Vice President Richard M. Nixon, and the Democratic candidate, Senator John F. Kennedy.
They began just 52 years ago on September 26, 1960.
I think Mr. Nixon is an effective leader of his party. I hope he would grant me the same.
Some people who listened to it on the radio thought that Nixon won, but it was generally conceded that people who watched it on television were pretty convinced that Jack Kennedy won.
Absolutely. And you know, what you say is important, but what you look like can be also as important.
Mr. Nixon, would you like to comment on that statement?
I have no comment.
In Nixon's case, he perspired. He had the audacity to perspire. And as a consequence, the venue where you are, where a debate goes on, it's like a meat locker. And that's the reason. And they negotiate how cold it's going to be because nobody wants to perspire because look what happened to Nixon. I mean, it's amazing.
Even a great communicator like Franklin Roosevelt knew the risk of debating. He was a heavy favorite to win re-election in 1940. So when Republican Wendell Willkie demanded a debate, FDR ignored it. He knew that just appearing on the same stage with the president enhanced the stature of any challenger.
I think that we both just, if he's agreeable, I think we just both just stand here.
When's the summation?
It's hard to know where we'd be today if Nixon in 1960 had followed Roosevelt's lead. But once burned, Nixon never debated again. Nor did Lyndon Johnson, who had preceded him to the White House. So there were no debates in 1964, 68, or 72.
This is a CBS News special report.
Only after his poll numbers dropped did Gerald Ford agree to debate challenger Jimmy Carter in 1976.
I interviewed Ford about this. I said, why did you agree to the debate? He said, it was my only hope. Because he was down and out because of having pardoned Nixon. That's why he was so far down. And he said, if I could get Jimmy Carter to debate me, I might have a chance.
Yet, Ford ended up hurting his chances with this statement.
There is no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, and there never will be under a Ford administration.
It was a serious gaffe in the Cold War era when the Soviet Iron Curtain extended across Europe.
Could I just follow? Did I understand you to say, sir, that the Russians are not using Eastern Europe as their own sphere of influence and occupying?
It certainly made for compelling television. Each of the Ford-Carter debates drew in more than 60 million viewers. The public had spoken. The debates were here to stay.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Today, the debates have become perhaps the only chance to get millions from both parties to sit down and hear what the other side has to say, with just the candidates speaking for themselves.
And one of the things that debates do that's very important is they dampen down some of the effect of money in politics.
Kathleen Hall Jameson of the Annenberg School for Communication at the University of Pennsylvania is a scholar on American elections.
When we institutionalize debates as a format, we're communicating to the world as well as to the country that we practice what we preach. We believe that there's value in the clash of competing ideas. We believe that the public should judge individuals based on what it is they say and how they argue and how they respond to each other, not simply on the way in which they advertise to us.
Even so, the reality is no candidate steps before the cameras without serious preparation, which is where Brett O'Donnell comes in.
Do these candidates, and I suspect that they do, go into these debates with a few lines that they are determined to use?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
O'Donnell made Liberty University in Virginia into a debating powerhouse. Now he teaches Republican politicians debate technique. He's helped George W. Bush and John McCain, and he coached Mitt Romney during the primaries.
The object is to capture the imagination of both the audience and the press to make sure your message gets covered. And one way to do that is to have a clever line.
And no one could deliver a line like Ronald Reagan.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
With those words, Reagan turned concern that he'd gotten old and dotty on its head. Challenger Walter Mondale said later, "When I heard that, I knew I had lost."
What would you consider a successful debate?
That the things that matter the most to the voters, to hell with the candidates, and to hell with the moderators, and to hell with the handlers, and to hell with the pundits, but the things that the voters care the most about have been discussed, and have been discussed in a way that they can now understand what the differences are. That's what these debates are really all about.